Welcome to the FaithFlex podcast, your sanctuary for soulful exploration and practical wisdom, where spiritual growth joins together with the hustle of daily life. I'm your host, Roxanne. I'm so glad you decided to join me and countless others because this is your moment for reflection, for growth, for real life change. Whether you're seeking a whisper of inspiration or a robust blueprint for action, the FaithFlex podcast stands as a testament to the daring spirit within all of us. So, to my pursuers and my dreamers, to my doers and believers, our journey awaits. Welcome. Hey fam, and welcome to another episode of the FaithFlex podcast. This is your girl, your host, Roxanne, and I'm super excited today because I have another guest. So our special guest today is coming from Dallas, Texas, and her name is Tiffany Clark. And we're going to talk about breaking chains and really understanding attachments and trauma. So I need all you guys to take a half a second, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to this episode because we're going to talk about something really amazing. So, Tiffany, welcome to the FaithFlex podcast, to the Faith Fam family. We are super excited to have you here today. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. Absolutely. So let's just talk about you as a person. So let's introduce you to our FaithFlex community. So Tiffany is a licensed marriage and family therapist, associate out of the state of Texas, and an education advocate. She works full-time as a therapist, and she also provides counseling service to special education students in charter schools across the DFW area. And she sees clients privately with Ellie mental health, virtually and in person. So she hosts a ton of wellness and therapeutic retreats. And as a therapist, her philosophy centers around creating a safe, nurturing, and inclusive space where everyone can explore their thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And so, how amazing is that? And then the firmly believes that cultivating curiosity, vulnerability, courage, and honesty are the keys that open the door to self discovery and healing. And Tiffany approach is really aimed towards empowering individuals to embrace their qualities, guiding them towards a path of joy and growth and authenticity, inner fulfillment, and embracing their superpower, aka uniqueness and strength. So listen, we're in for a treat because we have a superhero, Shiro, here with us today. She's going to break it down to us. We're going to talk about breaking chains, understanding attachment and trauma. So here's the thing. In this episode today, we're going to talk about explore the elements that shape our relationships, our behaviors, our spiritual lives. And Tiffany's going to share her journey and her insight today about what traumas and attachment looks like for us. And then hopefully by the end of this episode, you're going to walk away with some ideas and some food for thought and some things to consider, and if not in if anything, some tools to leverage in your own life. So you guys know I like to do definitions in FaithFlex podcast. So here's a definition of an attachment, right? According to Webster, attachment is a strong feeling or affection or loyalty to someone or something. And the word trauma is defined as a deeply distressing or disturbing experience or physical injury. So Tiffany, talk to us about attachment and trauma. Like has been your experience as a therapist, working in a very culturalized, diverse community, which is the Dallas area. What have you discovered and what have you found?
Well, I have found that we all are definitely much more alike than different in this area.
Right.
And all of us have experienced some level of trauma and attachment. Like we all have an attachment style. The ideal is a secure attachment, which I won't say is rare, but it is something that has to be cultivated and worked on. And attachment styles are developed from a very early age, like it's subconscious. um, which is why we usually say things like, well, it's just my nature, or it's
Oh,
just how I am. Well, it's how you are because we're built, and I believe that God has created us as humans to survive and thrive in whatever environment that we're in. So think about a baby. When a baby comes into the world, they are automatically learning.
yeah,
Even in the womb, babies are learning. They cook in all of the emotions and the feelings and the vibes of the mother. And when they come into the world, they are picking up everything.
yeah,
They don't know they are, but they are.
right.
So that's where our attachment styles are formed, and also what we call maladaptive schemas, which contribute to how we show up, our thoughts, our feelings, emotions, behaviors, and they really come out of the core beliefs that are created from
Mhm,
our experiences, which develop the attachment style, so to speak. So, depending on what your environment is or was at that time growing up in those formidable years, that impacts how we show up now. Because, I mean, like I said, we're created to survive and thrive in the environment. So, it's not good or bad. I like to point that out to my clients that this is not to say that your mom or your dad or whoever your caretaker was or whatever your environment was intentionally,
mhm,
to is the cause of all of your problems. It's literally whatever environment we are in,
sure.
our bodies, God made us so amazingly that our
Yeah.
bodies cocoon us. It protects us however it sees fit for us to survive in that environment. The issue comes in is when we go into new environments
Mhm,
as we grow in life and we have different experiences, we get either positive deposits in the box of, affirming
mm,
positive behaviors and thought patterns, or we have experiences that deposit into that box that affirms maybe those not so positive ways of being and thinking. So I always ask my clients, like, okay, so what did that teach you? So, like with
mm,
kids, let's say you see a kid and you see other kids teasing somebody else for the way they look or what they're wearing or how they talk. Depending on the person that's witnessing this and their core beliefs and all of their things, it could teach that person that, you know what, I identify with that person. I don't okay, so I can't be myself because if I am, they're going to treat me like that.
got it.
So it's taught me that I can't show up authentically. And depending on how many experiences as we go through life that either contribute to that thought or disencourages that determines how we show up. So it could be that now, as the person has gotten older, they've just gotten used to having a mask or not feeling comfortable in what we call their skin or being authentic or speaking their mind and so on and so forth.
So
So,
let that you may bring up a lot of great points, and I want to kind of dive in a little deeper. So talk to us about the different types of attachment. Because you really talked about that. You talked about secure attachment, which is what we develop over, in an early age because it's part of our life and our culture. And so, I mean, that's our first experience, right? We don't even really understand our faith beliefs until later on. But naturally, when we're born, there are immediate forms of attachment. So, talk to us about the different types of attachment or attachment style.
so there are four general ones, and one being secure. Then there's the insecure avoidant. We have insecure resistant and insecure disorganized.
Mm,
So, depending on your relationship or experiences with your initial caretaker, and how that bond is or wasn't, determines the attachment style. So, if you had a parent that wasn't very attentive to you or made you possibly feel like, okay, what you're doing is not enough, it's possible that it can lead into some type of either avoidant attachment style or anxious attachment style, depending.
So
Um,
so avoidant attachment style is you just disconnect or you reject attachment?
Depending on the situation, and it can show up differently for different people. And I tell my clients like it's sneaky because it's subconscious, and it could depend on the type of relationship you're in, and not
Mhm,
just romantic. It could be any type of relationship. So some people are definitely more secure with their partner, but when it comes to their relationship with their parents or someone else, then depending on what that experience was, it could be very detached. And so if you learn that I have to be independent, it's possible that in your relationships, you are prone to not accepting help or avoiding closeness.
mm,
Um, Disorganized is kind of like a combination. It's like, I want love, but I'm scared to have it, so I'm going to resist it type thing.
ooh,
Um, it's very interesting and intriguing. And that's why I like the approach that I take to therapy was, I mean, comes from my own experience, but just getting curious about how did I get this way? Where did it come from?
right.
Not in an accusatory way or self-critical way, but really wanting to understand who I am as a person. How did this develop? What makes me tick? Why am I prone to think this way? Why do I respond in this manner? What about this bothered me? You know, when you're talking to somebody and in your mind, you kind of go, or you tilt your head. I question all of those things to see where that comes from, because
Ah,
it's always rooted in a core belief
sure.
that comes from your attachment style. But
Right.
understanding those experiences
Mhm.
is critical, but that's what the hard part is. And a lot of people don't like that part because you don't know really what you're going to find. And it does involve having to tap into possibly some very painful memories or experiences. And it can be challenging and hard, but I recommend it 5 stars. I
Alright.
do. I do.
So I want to talk about this. So when you're dealing with your attachment styles, right? When you're in relationships and you're trying, me as a person who I didn't have, so grew up in the two-parent home, but my both of my parents had different upbringings, right? So there's the conflict in itself. And then they both were bound to culture. So one very traditional Baptist home, the other one is very traditional, low income, impoverished home. So the expectations, the values, the viewpoints, the perceptions are different. And so you have two viewpoints that are, raising daughters in the household, and that can be very challenging. So my question to you is, how do we um, really address our attachment styles, right? Because like myself, I grew up in a household that had two different perspectives of upbringing, different cultural upbringings. One's very traditional, very much Baptist, very church all day. And then I had another parent that was raised in the church, but was really bound to culture because we were very low income and lived in poverty, if you will. So here's the thing. If I want to be loved, I know that I have some um not intentional trauma, but I have some experience in traumas. What are some of the things they should be looking for, right, to raise awareness that maybe their viewpoint into a new situation in their adult lives or in their children's lives may be from trauma?
Well, the first step is to be able to identify what trauma is. And I feel like
Mhm.
that is a huge part of it. And a lot of us, depending on our cultures, we don't consider trauma actual trauma. It's
Mm,
just the way you're supposed to be, and this is the way it is, you know.
I
Um,
agree. So, like, give us some examples of some of the things that don't identify as trauma that may be trauma? I can think of like two right now, but
Well, so here's the thing. Trauma, the basic definition of it is a highly distressing situation or experience.
right.
And that is relative.
Mm,
So oftentimes we minimize or dismiss or don't even recognize our trauma because we tend to think of trauma in those big explosive things like
oh, I see.
sexual assault or abuse of some sort or those types of things. Trauma can be anything that's highly distressing to you.
Mm,
So for me, I know that people saying and meaning what they say and do what they say they're going to do is really important to me.
sure.
That comes from experiences in my childhood where people did not show up for me when they said they were going to show up for me.
Makes sense.
It doesn't seem like it's trauma because it's like, well, okay, they didn't. But
That's
over
true
time, it's
though.
like, what does that teach you? It teaches
Yeah.
me that I can't trust
Yeah.
a person. And now potentially I get anxious because it's like, I want you to come through for me and I want to believe that, but I'm bracing myself in case you don't. That causes a sense of anxiety, which
Mm,
is excessive worry.
yeah.
That's what
Sure.
anxiety is. So, depending on that, so now our behavior from the core belief of, I don't want to be abandoned and I
Hmm.
can't trust people. So
Wow.
either I'm going to do everything I can to keep them
Right.
from leaving, i.e., or I want to do everything I can so that they will follow through. Depending on
Right.
how you process that,
Right.
that impacts your thoughts, your
Hmm.
feelings, and then
Yeah.
your behavior about it.
Yeah.
But if you're not aware or don't even consider that as trauma, or, you know, boy, don't cry about it, right?
Yeah.
Um, what is some, just,
Like I
and
can think
I speak from my our culture, right, of
right.
people of color. It's a lot of things are just as simple as seeing our mothers or grandmothers put everybody first and
First.
not
Yeah.
them. What does
Yeah.
that teach me? That teaches me that it's normal to try to take on the world.
Yeah.
And then when I can't,
I'm a failure.
somehow you're inadequate.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I've had to experience over my own time, my own growth. More specifically in the last 5 years, because what I was, as I'm being the oldest of four girls, I remember being raised as the oldest, right? And I think I need to create a group for older siblings because we
Yes,
went
I
through
am
some
the
stuff.
oldest sibling.
Whew, child. So I remember my dad really being this advocate of, you're the oldest and you have to set the example. So to the point that it was extreme, which caused trauma for me because even though my sisters were in trouble, I may not even been in the house, I may not have been in the area, I was still in trouble with them. So I was being disciplined along with my sisters for an act that I didn't do, right? Because it was like, well, they somehow got the example from you. And in turn, because of my own frustration, now, please be clear, I'm not justifying behavior, but in turn, because I was not aware that this level of discipline was having a negative impact on me, I would act out and of course, I have a strong mouth, so I would talk back and be like, "Look here, that's
Right.
their issue. Why am I getting a whooping? If I'm going to get a whooping, I'm going to do it because I did something."
Mhm.
Right. And so, so that's the first area of trauma because what that taught me over the 18 years of my life and some is that when my sisters make a mistake as adults, I'm the one that had to fix it. So when my sisters got pregnant and the baby daddy wasn't around, I was the one had to help them. And I was made to feel guilty when I could not, or I did not, or I choose not to. Now, and this is after understanding going to therapy, that's the challenge. So that's the first half. And then the other half of it is um, because I was always looking for a way to show that I not being inadequate, I want to show that to my parents that, yeah, I'm the big sister and I did all these great things. Now give me a pat on the back because you are quick to give me a whipping, but you're not quick to praise me. And so I was raised under this statement that if I don't have anything to say to you, then you're doing a good thing, which is so crazy because then the only engagement that I have with you is when you and I are at odds or if I'm in trouble. So will always have a negative connotation when I made a mistake, even though the mistake might be minor. For me, it's crazy because I go back to that experience of trauma that I experienced for many years. Now, if you ask any traditional household in the 80s, 90s, they will literally say, "Oh, that's just normal," and you're just acting out. But now that we're in the 2000 and we're really taking a deeper look into the humanity, the emotional health, the mental health, spiritual health of people, we may want to reconsider how we approach that. So, what is your thoughts on really being honest and, like you said earlier, authentic about your experiences that may have been noted as, not necessarily trauma, but has made a huge impact in your life? Man, I feel like I've been on the couch with Tiffany. Oh my gosh, this conversation is so good. And we really hope that you're enjoying this episode because this is part of a three-part series called Breaking the Chain, Understanding Attachment and Traumas. And we want you to join us next week for part 2. And remember to like, share, and subscribe. And make sure you remember to flex your faith. Until next time, thanks everybody. And that's a wrap on today's soul-stirring episode of the FaithFlex podcast. I hope you're leaving feeling uplifted and equipped to turn your everyday experience into stepping stones for spiritual growth and practical living. Thank you for tuning in and sharing your time with me. Be sure to subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave a review if you enjoyed the journey today. Your support means the world to me, and it helps bring this message to more listeners who are searching for harmony between their spiritual walk and action. Until next time, remember to flex your faith.